Hey, happy NFL Week 1, NFL fans out there. I'm Chris from NJPW Live, and that's Alex, and we're going to discuss some news. So, Alex, here's the news I want to discuss with you. In advance of the new NXT that's coming up this Tuesday on USA Network. So, this is from Figure 4 Wrestling Online with the Wrestling Observer. In the WWE NXT last week, the last episode of the old NXT, whatever that ends up being, whatever the distinction being, NXT averaged 601 viewers on the USA Network on Tuesday night, Tuesday the 7th, down 16.2% from last week, so the prior week. It's the lowest viewership the show has done on the USA Network since moving to Tuesday nights. So back after WrestleMania, NXT moved to Tuesday nights to stop being opposed with AEW. And, at the time, we had thought, okay, now that they're on different nights, we'll see the viewership go back up. Like, they're no longer competing with AEW for the same viewers, right? What we've seen instead is that AEW Dynamite continues to go up. This video is not about AEW, but it is worth mentioning that AEW had the highest number they've ever had this past Wednesday. They had 1,349,000. It was the estimate for the rating, or the viewers, the average. You know how it goes. While NXT continues to trend down, this last month has been the lowest NXT has ever had. It's been pretty rough, and just overall, like going back to the beginning of April, where they were at close to 800,000, and then it just steadily progressed down lower and lower there. They even had down to 500,000 when they moved to Sci-Fi for a couple weeks for the Olympics. So it's been a rough go for NXT. Just the 10-week average, according to Figure 4 Online, is 650,000 over the last 10 weeks. Compared that to AEW, which is averaging about 1 million in that same time frame, Dynamite. So, it's not great news.
No. That's it. I think it speaks to a lot of things going on, like especially behind the scenes.
Yeah, so they did a little bit more digging to the numbers. They come to the conclusion, so Figure 4 Online's come to the conclusion that the drop seems to be mainly with younger viewers, and particularly with younger females, in the 12 to 34 demo for females. They drew a 0.06 in the demo, which is the lowest all time, except for like a random episode in December, a year or two ago. That's it. Wow. And I did want to point those numbers out because there's I think a twofold thing going on here, and I wanted to get your thoughts about it, and we'll kind of go from there. Obviously, we all know that NXT is rebranding next week, or this week coming up, rather, starting on Tuesday, right? It's got the colorful NXT logo we've seen teased a little bit. But we have known that this rebrand has been coming for about a month and a half. And I wonder, if there's a portion of the viewer base that was like, well, NXT is, and the reports have been like NXT as we know it is ending, right? They kicked out a bunch of NXT mainstays. We had those awful releases in the middle of the summer with the class that included Bronson Reed as like the biggest name out of that. Adam Cole just left. His contract expired, right? He wasn't released.
Right.
And it's been just this constant turnover in NXT, and I wonder, and your thoughts, is that causing people to lose interest?
Honestly, yes. Like the very short answer to that is yes, and I think the reason why is like I don't know. I stay hip to what's been talked about on Twitter and other social media, and like there's definitely a trend of like you as you notice like some of the again, this kind of goes, I feel like a good chunk of this goes back to the whole issue with the releases. Like earlier in the year, back in April, we had a number of releases from the main roster, but there were also a couple NXT releases. And obviously like one of the big news at that time was the fact that Malachi Black's actual contract deal was I think it was the issue was it was actually a 30-day.
And that was around the time,
Yeah.
that the Iconics, which were, just featured the night before,
Exactly.
were released.
So like you had
Another name, Ruby Riot,
Yeah.
right? She was also released as part of that class.
Right, and like the crazy thing about it was at that time, there was like this was the thing that was being talked about. Like we kind of had a feeling like we were gonna see some of these cuts happening in NXT sooner rather than later, and then that's exactly what happened. And I think
A little bit later.
yeah, a little bit later, obviously, but yeah, it's just a point of like yeah, now you kind of see this issue where names that you really wanted to see on NXT are not there, and what you kind of see replaced, like what you see replacing those names has not been quite up to the same standard, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. Like
I don't
there's
know if
still
standards
there's still
the word, I think
quality, like there's still
notoriety,
quality
maybe.
stuff. Yeah, the same variety. Like there's still quality stuff happening. Like Takeover's really good. I don't know if it was amazing like it's been in the past, but it was definitely still really good. But it was kind of notable for feeling just a little bit less than like what was typical. And I think realizing like again, Adam Cole is now gone. Like we literally just saw him last weekend. And it's like okay, he's gone. You have other people gone, and when you mix that in with the speculation that's been going around about them trying to come back, trying to almost pare it back down to being a developmental brand, that's when you start to realize okay, there's definitely a shift in kind of the expectations and what they're planning to do with NXT as a brand. And like the actual
Right.
rebranding and all that, it's like just one of the examples of those changes happening.
Yeah. I guess, if there's a silver line here, you really have only where to go but up, like, right?
Right.
We have a rebrand coming up. We're starting to see, a focus on newish stars, like Ridge Holland has been featured regularly now, and he's like this young guy. He's exactly what WWE likes. I think that's the other thing is there's been so many reports that WWE wants to go back to the larger than life people, the big hulking men, and we saw, big news this week. Gable Stevenson, Olympic
Yeah.
wrestler, has signed a FIL contract, which is something imaging and likeness. I can't remember what the F stands for. Contract so that he could like appear for WWE while finishing off his college career as a senior at the University of Minnesota. But he seems to be like the type of thing, like WWE is looking for Gable Stevensons. And there's the Bronson Reichsteiner who's in the developmental right now. There's the Parker Bordeaux, the Brock Lesnar lookalike. Gable Stevens' brother, I apologize, I don't know his first name, is also in developmental, and he's another big hulking guy. And I think the reports that those type of people will be the ones that are featured and pushed, I think, have put some people off. Because, I think a lot of wrestling fans like having wrestlers who look like them.
Yeah.
And when we see it,
yeah. It's
with like the current ones, like that they got into wrestling because of CM Punk. Now, whether that was just for the feud or whether that's actually true, it's probably a little bit of both, right? But he looks like in the mold of CM Punk with the way he dresses and acts, right? The tattoos and the face paint is not CM Punk, but still he's got a lot of ink on his body overall, right? And he did that because there was someone in WWE who looked like him, who acted like him, and that's why he got into wrestling. And I think there's an element of it that I think fans may be fearing, like, is Johnny Gargano going to be gone now? We're seeing him featured a little bit less on TV, even though the wedding of Indy Hartwell and, oh gosh, fill in my name for me, please. Dexter Lumis, thank you.
Dexter Lumis.
Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis is going to highlight the new NXT, by the way, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But there's lots of speculation. People are worried about like Gargano and Ciampa, being kicked off the brand because they're approaching 40s, right? The rumor is that anyone over 30 is not going to be in NXT. Anyone who's not a big hulking athlete is not going to be in NXT. I don't know if that's true, and I hope not. Like, NXT should be a developmental brand.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's It's another example of those changes that seem to have been
Yeah.
coming. It's like,
So
yeah.
let's look forward then,
Mhm.
because whether I'm elected or not, change is happening, right? The colorful NXT is starting next week. What are you looking forward? What are you looking for? When you tune on Tuesday night. So we do know some things that are happening. It's the wedding of Index, right? What do you want to see in the new NXT? We'll call it the new NXT for lack of a better word here.
It's funny because like there's definitely a couple things I'm looking at. Like I think it was, for example, because it was interesting to see like the sneak peeks of the new NXT that they like highlighted on Smackdown even. It's funny because there's a couple minor things that I'm looking forward to, and then like there's the major things. Like there is a part of me that actually looks forward to seeing them do a bit more actual developmental with NXT. I think I kind of to your point earlier, what I do want to see is them not completely shift over and then completely leave behind like some of the bigger names associated with NXT, because it's like it's what's the word I'm looking for? There's that old phrase about the can of worms. You open it and you can't close it back up. They've already done the thing where they've transitioned out of it being purely developmental, where you just sign people that like aren't familiar with pro wrestling or sports entertainment. We've already
Right. It became an indie brand under the
exactly.
WWE
We already
banner,
opened
as
that thing.
opposed to a developmental brand.
They can try to close it up as much as they want, but it's yeah. But I think
So people like Mansoor skip developmental because there's no room for them,
yeah.
and now
and
which I'm sure is a card somewhere showing that video.
Exactly. So like that's I want to say that's the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to. One minor thing that I'm kind of looking forward to though is the change in seating arrangement. And I know that sounds weird, but I have a slight eye for production stuff. And when they did the little video showing the new NXT, including the rebranded logo and all that, I saw that little flash of an image of
they changed the arena.
The change of the arena. I was like, okay. Because here's the thing.
It's kind of like stadium.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I liked this. We talked about this before when they started doing the Capitol Wrestling Center. I liked it at the time. It was a nice like mixture of having a few more actual like fans around, and then having the screens like the Thunderdomes. Like if that's what you're gonna do, then at least it worked. That was my opinion at the time. That was fine for what it was. Now we're back to actually having crowds again, and for the CWC, it's a little, I don't know, it's a little packed to still have all that particular.
Well, they replaced a lot of the back seating with the monitors, so you had like, the one row of fans in the front hitting the glass.
But that's kind of my thing is like now it's just rows of.
It's gonna be more open.
Right now it's just rows of fans behind.
It kind of reminds me if you've ever seen like a football stadium shot where they show the open bowl and like
it's like an amphitheater. It feels like an amphitheater
like
within
an amphitheater type thing. Like the stage is like coming out because like the ramp is like at one of the corners as opposed to one of the sides.
Exactly, it's like stuff like that. Like
and we've seen that set up
stuff like
in some arenas. So
changes like that actually excite me. It's like that, like it's gonna be interesting, and I'm especially interested to seeing how it actually looks on TV. Because you can show me a schematic, and that's one thing, like they kind of did with that little tease. It's another thing to show it on TV itself. But I'm actually excited for that. Like from a production standpoint, I think it'll be interesting to see.
So here's what I want to see, and this is it's partly a change I want to see on TV and partly a change in philosophy. I think the biggest thing I want to see out of this new NXT is I want them to get to a place where if they create characters on NXT, that those characters can go to Raw and SmackDown and not have to be radically altered. So, for whatever reason, right? And, whether it's Mr. McMahon, whether it's Bruce Pritchard, whether it's someone on creative, right? Time and time again, it was like the biggest fear of the internet wrestling community is for their favorite star to go from NXT to Raw or SmackDown because for some reason the character gets changed. So if this new NXT with Vince and Bruce at the helm means that if they create characters on NXT, that those characters can continue to be characters on Raw and SmackDown. That's what I'm looking for, right? We saw it with Karrion Kross. He's now like a Mad Max villain.
Yeah, he's basically Lord Humongous.
Lord Humongous. Yeah, he's not carrying Cross anymore. I think the next thing they're gonna do is they're gonna change his music to like generic rock. Like that's like, and then there's a lot of great characters. Like LA Knight is main roster ready, but are they gonna change his character if they move him to the main roster? Are they gonna change Cameron Grimes' character, who's like this old and you know, this awesome character right now? So if this new NXT is what it has to be to get to a stable place where the show is canon with the rest of WWE, I think that would satisfy. And I think that's why people are dropping off, is because they're just tired of seeing their favorite characters completely change when they go to Raw or SmackDown. I really think the Karrion Kross thing was like, the straw that came back for a lot of viewers. And I think knowing that the old NXT was ending also didn't help. So hopefully we make the change, right? We get this brand new color scheme, this brightness, this openness. We get this focus on younger characters. If Ridge Holland is your focus, great. If it's Gable Stevenson, if it's Parker Bordeaux, if there's any other of the big hulking guys they have going on back there, I'm fine with featuring those new talents. I want consistency.
Right.
And I think we'll leave it there. So what are your thoughts out there? Are you excited about the new NXT? Are you a grumpy person about the new NXT? You can tell us down in the comments. You can check us out, all wrestling things, at occupyprowrestling.com. Above my head, we are on all the socials at Power, the number 2, the Smarts, which is above Alex's head. I'm Chris. That's Alex. This is OPW Live's news update. We'll see you next time. Alex, play the outro.